It's about the I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe.
Phoenix has the foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
DeBrincat gets it back to Goss. Sparing across now. Kane. They score! Raymond!
Green 5. Johnson to throw, and it's caught by St. Greg for a first down.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Welcome in. Welcome one, welcome all. On a Tuesday, you know, it's weird doing a show after basically an extra bye week for the Lions. It's like I just feel like I don't know what to do with the vibes of this show. It's like I'm going into it, with a kind of nervousness, and a sort of unease about, the game upcoming on Saturday here. But I'm also like not like off the high of a previous week's win. Like we're already, at this point I'm just sort of in this weird status of like comfortability, knowing in a sense that uncomfortability is going to be coming on Saturday. And we'll get into that a little bit. I don't think I'm really going to do that much of a, full game preview kind of thing. That's just not really something that I do. So look, wild card weekend. It was in fact wild, unless you were a home team, in which case it was for the most part not really that wild, except for one particular team that we will talk about later in the show because it has immediate interest in the Lions. But we got a lot to talk about. I mean, we got the college football playoff because, I think the NCAA is finally punishing Michigan in some way. So this is apparently, I don't think most people expected this to be the punishment, but it is what it is. Then you see what I'm wearing. We got to talk a little bit of Red Wings. That right now they're losing though, 1-0 to the Sharks because apparently they can beat every single team other than the San Jose Sharks. This has been a theme of this team for at least the last couple of seasons. But we also got to talk some Pistons. Pistons with a huge win last night. Huge win over the New York Knickerbockers. That I went into that game. I was like, all right, it's kind of a write-off. You can, on the road, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Play well, but don't worry about it. But boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. We'll talk about it though. And I guess just the rest of the schedule for both the Red Wings and for the Pistons. But obviously, primarily, I'm an NFL guy, so we're going to talk some NFL wildcard to start the show. All right. So breaking it down, it's weird. Again, we're like, usually when I start these shows, it's like, okay, we're talking about a Lions game, or we're talking about, something more, I'm emotionally into it. But in this case, we're just kind of doing up and down right at the beginning. We're just running down the week. I got to get used to this because I don't know I don't know what to do with my hands. But anyway, let's just get started. So the first game of the wild card weekend, Texans Chargers. Now, I will say, full disclosure, I did not watch all of this game. I watched the first half of this game and I thought, well, this is awful. I can't bear to watch any of this garbage. This is just terrible. Neither of these teams want to win. It seems like the Texans are hemming it in. It seemed like the Chargers are not taking advantage of opportunities being given to them by the team that's hemming it in. And then, lo and behold, later the night when I check my cellular telephone to see what the score is, I come to find out that Seth's Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego got the doors knocked off of them because apparently Justin Herbert didn't know which team was his. Like, I've made this comparison before, and I don't think that I'm alone in making this comparison, but it kind of feels like Justin Herbert is the Chargers version of Matthew Stafford. It's like he's brought him to the playoffs a couple of times. Both times it's been pretty not great. It started good in the first game against Jacksonville. Didn't end so great. In this game, I guess you could say it started good in a certain sense. They were up 6-0 after the first quarter, and that was the last time that they were up anything. That was pretty much where it ended from there. On the other side of it, it wasn't like Justin Herbert was the only one who didn't have a great game. J.K. Dobbins, their lead running back, had a whopping, and I will say this is an astronomical number, a whopping 26 yards and 2.9 a carry on 9 carries. So yeah, we're gonna need to upgrade that position. LA gonna definitely need to upgrade that. But Ladd McConkey had a great game. I mean, like I said at the time of the draft, and Seth also said this as our local Chargers fan, the one and only. He said, getting Ladd McConkey, this made up for the fact that the Chiefs went offensive line in the first round of this past draft. And it's paid off in a lot of ways. Ladd McConkey has been one of their best wide receivers, and he's a slot guy, so he's not, a deep ball threat necessarily, but he can take the lion's share of the receptions and, basically be your offense, because that's pretty much what he was. When one player has almost 200 yards worth of offense and it's not the quarterback, that's how you know. Okay, that's how you know that he's really good. Of course, it ultimately didn't mean much of anything because Houston just suffocated them. CJ Stroud played a pretty good game, 282 yards and a touchdown and a pick. Joe Mixon ran all over him, 106 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins, 122 yards. It's just despite the fact that he's pretty much the only wide receiver out there for the Texans because what's his name? Didn't Tank Dell his leg was pointing in a direction it wasn't supposed to be. We'll just say that. I think it was Tank Dell. They took advantage of what they could. Houston back-to-back home playoff wins for them. Despite a pretty disappointing year for the Texans, they have a chance here to go to the AFC Championship game. A regular season that left a lot to be desired. We very well could be seeing a team kind of figure it out late and perform at this high stage. One problem, though, for them. They got to play Michael Jordan next week, essentially. We'll talk about that when we get to the picks, but it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate how it worked out for Houston, but I will say I picked the Chargers to win. Seth also picked the Chargers to win. I'm disappointed for the Chargers in that I thought they had a much better season than most people were giving them credit for. The fact that they made the playoffs and won double-digit games, that's a huge success for Jim Harbaugh in year one. I think he's sort of, got the train back on the tracks, and now it's just a matter of making sure that you continue to build around Justin Herbert, whether it be in the wide receiver room or add some run game help for him. It is unfortunate for them, but I don't think that they're in a bad spot. It's similar to the Broncos, where the Broncos, we'll get to them. They got blown out. Not going to spend too much time on that, but they lost the game, but you feel like you're probably in a pretty good spot. Like you're moving in the right direction. At least it seems that way. Now, for the Texans, I did allude to it. Are they going to be able to give Kansas City a run for their money? On the one hand, Kansas City has one of the best defenses in the league. Again, Spags is just a maniac as a defensive coordinator. On the other hand, I don't even know who their number one wide receiver is. Travis Kelce? I guess it's Travis Kelce, the tight end. Excuse me. Oh, geez. I'm dying. I am getting over something. I don't know if you can tell. You probably could tell on last episode as well that I was about to get under with something. I am getting over something. So if my voice begins to slowly die and you turn into something akin to when you're pushing the air out of a balloon, it's making that kind of noise. That's why I sound like that. Just putting that out there. But back on topic here. Can Houston give KC a run for their money? And it really depends, because the last time these teams played, it looked like they could. And then obviously the injury happened. And it just felt like the air was sucked out of Houston at that point, that they were just not going to be able to come back, not going to be able to get back into it. And Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes put them away. Now, these teams do have some history in the playoffs, obviously. For those of you who are a little too young, which, you'd have to be pretty young to not remember this. There was a game. I was in college at the time, and I think it was around, I guess it wouldn't have been finals because this was January, but it was around some time where I had some some early assignment, I guess, or something where I was not watching TV, or maybe I was studying or reading something. I don't know. And I remember I was like, okay, I had it on for when I was eating lunch or eating, in between. And I was like, wow, they're killing them. This isn't even close. And then, I went back to doing some studying or whatever it is I was doing. And then I come back and see the Kansas City Chiefs put up 50 points on the Texans. So you got to think Texans fans certainly don't forget that. I don't think any of those players are even still on the team. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's somebody, but I don't follow the Texans like that. But I don't think this is going to be a blowout for either team. However, it just feels like stupid Patrick Mahomes and stupid Kansas City is just going to get the little easy path back into the AFC Championship, and then it's anybody's game for who's going to make the Super Bowl. Like, basically, I'm unfortunately, I'm going to be in the hands of either the Buffalo Bills or Lamar Jackson in a high-stakes environment. I don't like any of that. Mahomes has already beaten Jackson earlier in the season. It was the first game of the year, although barely. He did lose to Josh Allen and the Bills. I don't want it to be up to that, all right? So, Houston, if you can just please do the world a favor. We don't want Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl for the second straight year. We don't want Travis Kelce yelling like a caveman. We don't even really want to see Patrick Mahomes. He's a perfectly nice guy. He's a perfectly amicable human being. But if I got to see that stupid T-Mobile commercial with him one more time, I'm going to throw my chair out the window. All right? So please, CJ Stroud, D'Amico Ryans, Derek Stingley, Bubbies, friends, do the world a favor. Kill that man. Kill him. I'm like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator, just doing this. I realize that doesn't really work because the camera and the angle here, but yeah, there's my fist. High res focused on a thumbs down. That's what I want. I don't want him to actually get hurt, but make him like emotionally hurt. You know? We'll see. We'll see. Moving along to murder and pain, because apparently that's on my mind. The Steelers inevitably got murdered by the Ravens. So I actually did allude to the fact that we were down to the Ravens. I didn't even realize, oh yeah, that's right, they had to play a playoff game last week, because this is another game that I did not watch a single minute of because I didn't need to watch a single minute of this game. You know why? Because I could have told you the result of this game if I knew nothing. Because if I literally, this is I didn't watch a single game throughout the entire season. All right? And all I had was my own narrative inclinations on the two teams as they were. Everybody and their mother knew that the Baltimore Ravens were going to go into this game and murder them. Murder them. And that's what they did. I mean, they were up 21.5 when the game was over. The game was over. We just didn't know it yet. That 21 points was all they needed, but they ended up scoring 28. It was, a scoreless fourth quarter. It didn't matter. Russell Wilson, I mean, it's just sad at this point. You want to say, you look at the box score and you're like, wow, he played a good game. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. You don't play a good game when you don't score a single point in the first half. I don't want to hear it. Like, short of you, having, penalties or crazy turnovers that are completely out of the control of the quarterback in some facet, or penalties away from the ball, like a holding or whatever. Short of any of that happening, it's on you, basically. Like, the fact that you're not scoring is on you. 3 out of the 4 quarters, you don't score a point. Shouldn't happen. Can't happen. But I wanted to ask the question because this is becoming a story, I feel. Is Mike Tomlin overrated? Like, think about it this way, okay? Because the only thing that people will say about Mike Tomlin, well, maybe not the only thing, but one of the more recent things people will say, he's had this unprecedented streak of winning records for the Steelers. Now, look, all right, I had to watch a lot of Lions teams that were very bad for most of my life, all right? For most of my life, the Lions would have one good year and then a bad year. The idea that you would be able to string together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many he's gotten in a row of winning more games than you are losing in a single season. That is something I wish that I would have the history of. However, the winning has to result in something meaningful actually being achieved. And that can be, and this is even being extra conciliatory, that can either be division championships, that can be conference championships, and of course, that can be Super Bowl championships. There's one problem. He's done the Super Bowl just once, his first year. He's done the conference championship, I think only just the once as well, maybe twice, I don't remember. I'm imagining he's probably won a few of those division championships, but man, when the top championships are entirely eclipsed by a lot of meaningless division titles and a lot of winning records where you don't even make the playoffs, the old 9-8 special but miss the playoffs, or frankly, make the playoffs and lose the first round, it's like it reminds me of those late years of the Pistons playoff streak or the Red Wings playoff streak for that matter, where it was like, yeah, you made it, but you're not going to go anywhere. So it's like you might as well not have even made it. That's how it feels with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. I love Mike Tomlin, the person. He is a fantastic NFL character, fantastic NFL mind. Like when they make the documentary about it, I'm sure he's gonna get something about him because he's one of the great coaches in terms of just a winning record. But Steeler fans, and look, I can only speak to the Steeler fans I see and hear online, and the most prominent one is, of course, the YouTuber Urinating Tree. So shout out you, Tree. I think they're basically done with him. It feels a lot like Tom Izzo, and I'm not going to talk college basketball right now, but Tom Izzo's having a really good year this year. But the general tenor the last few years, it feels very similar to that, where it's, okay, great. You have all this history. You're one of the great coaches, all that fun stuff, all that jazz. But the team is not actually getting anywhere. You're like on a treadmill, but you're not losing any weight. You're just not doing anything. And I guess, is it him or is it the roster? And I think it's a combination of both. And like, it's no coincidence to me that seemingly every wide receiver that the Steelers get that is even somewhat good, whether it's Antonio Brown or Juju Smith-Schuster or now George Pickens, that they all end up being psychopaths, basically. George Pickens seems like a total diva, total me guy, does not care about the team. Juju Smith-Schuster, same deal, total diva, doesn't care about the team, only cares about himself. Antonio Brown, he speaks for himself, sort of thing. Like, at a certain point, it's like, well, what kind of a culture are you actually bringing, Mike? You had the one Super Bowl championship, but outside of that, what have you got for me? Not a whole lot of positive. I'll just say that. I heard a comparison. Is he basically Doc Rivers? Like, is he Doc Rivers of the NFL? Except with Doc Rivers, it's, going to a bunch of different teams. With Tomlin, he's been stuck with Pittsburgh. They're never going to fire him. So I feel bad for Steelers fans because they're just sort of stuck. Like, you get to a point where messages get stale and all-time great coaches, they're not going to learn, right? Like, they're not going to learn new things because the game has passed them. And they're just kind of done. It's like Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is never going to get fired. They let him go. He, he kind of retired. But like, a guy like Tomlin, he's never getting fired. Why would he what are they going to fire him for? Just because he's not performing in the playoffs? I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. I've seen it too much where these coaches who, or frankly, even these players, they give the team its most high of highs, right? Whether it's championships or winning records or whatever. You're not going to get fired for winning more games than you're losing. So, I mean, maybe he should be because it's mediocrity, but he's not Jim Caldwell. He's not, Brad Osmus or, any of these. I'm just thinking of Detroit guys, Stan Van Gundy, guys that are like just kind of average to above average. This is not the kind of guy. This is not the coach we're talking about. We're talking about a Super Bowl winning champion. We're talking about a future Hall of Fame coach. So he's not going to get fired. You feel bad for the Steelers. It's hard to feel bad for the Steelers. They've won a lot. Can't feel too bad. Bills murder the Broncos. I got nothing to say about this game. Josh Allen's very good. That's all I got. For Denver, they made it interesting early. Like Bo Nix had the bomb to I don't even know what the guy's name was. But it was like, okay, all right. And then the offense just said, all right, that's it. We're done. As far as whether or not I think Sean Payton is their guy, I still don't really think so. Although this year certainly was a step in the right direction for him. We'll see if it was just sort of a mirage. The thing is, their record against teams with winning records, not great. All right. Minus, the garbage win they had against Kansas City that got them in the playoffs. And that's the fear I have with Denver is they get a little bit of taste of a kind of success, but it's not actually real. Like it's just kind of a mirage of success to where, next year, I don't know what their schedule looks like, but next year they get, they get an actually difficult schedule and they kind of get exposed. They go back to that 8-9 or that 7-10 mold that maybe they realistically were. But that's that. Moving on then to the NFC. All right. Now this I have to talk about. And I don't care how sick my voice sounds. I don't care if I lose my voice by the end of this segment. Oh, that's not good. That's not a good sign to start. But I have to talk about this because this is something that, I find myself not saying I told you so exactly, but in a certain sense saying, why did we get to where we were? I don't know if that makes any sense. So the Packers and the Eagles played, and the Eagles won. There's not really much of a surprise. The Packers were the 7th seed. The Eagles were, the higher seed. They were the 2 seed. It makes sense. I was going to say the 4 seed, but I was like, nope, that's not right. 2 seed versus 7 seed. Usually the 7th seed does not win, except for last year when Green Bay murdered the Cowboys. And, that game actually, I think, is relevant because I think that game combined with, the divisional round and combined with Thanksgiving of last year and combined with a few others, those are the games that tricked us. And when I say us, I mean NFL fans. So not if you weren't tricked, just bear with me. Tricked us into thinking that Jordan Love was Aaron Rodgers. I remember, and this is something that I despise, okay? It is unfair to the player, and it is unfair to us, the fans, when I see media members, and that is up to and including, independent YouTube personalities, looking at tape of a guy and saying, oh, he's doing the thing that this other Hall of Fame player used to do. Because what that does psychologically in your mind is it sets you in this mindset of, okay, this player has got to be at least as good as that other guy. Now, you might put up some road barriers. You might put up some, warning signs that say, no, actually, okay, be careful. Okay, we're not trying to say he's... But we fall into this, all right? And I think the Green Bay Packers and the NFL fans largely fell into this with Jordan Love. Last year, Jordan Love had about half a good season. Roughly starting on, a little before Thanksgiving and then on Thanksgiving, Jordan Love, from that point on through the playoffs into the NFC divisional round, he played very good football. There's no denying that. However, that was the only evidence we really had. It was roughly less than half of a season, right? We were talking Thanksgiving. We're talking like maybe the final third of the season. And this year, I think we got a taste of what exactly we should come to expect from Jordan Love. And maybe this is me doing the opposite, and I'm trying not to. But now I have more evidence on the flip side that Jordan Love is not only not this elite top 10 quarterback, he might not be, an average quarterback at the rate he's going. And you could say, he's got plenty of time, and he does, and his weapons room is not great. That's true, it's not. But that didn't stop him last year. And that didn't stop fans last year from, saying, "Oh my gosh, he's doing this with all his." It's like you can't say, "Oh, he's doing it without all the weapons. He's so good," and then when he doesn't do as good, "Oh, we don't have any weapons." It's like, wait a minute, I thought he could do it without the weapons. I thought he didn't need the weapon, and he does have some weapons. Let's not, Jaden Reed's a pretty good football player. I've seen him before. I don't know if you're familiar, but Jordan Love on this particular game, he didn't throw just one interception. He didn't throw just two. My man threw 3. And 3 is about the number of interceptions to where I am basically like, all right, that's fairly unforgivable. Especially, obviously, I've seen games where guys throw those amount of interceptions, they still win or still can put up good stats overall. In this case, the guy threw the ball 33 times, 3 interceptions, 212 yards, no touchdowns. He ran the ball twice for 10 yards. This Green Bay team just was never all that good. And this is the dirty little secret. Going up and down the schedule here for Green Bay. Let me just talk about this, all right? What is their best win, you think? Like a win where you would say, okay, that's the one. That's the marquee defining win for them. All right? Let's see. Was it the Colts? No, the Colts aren't good, but they barely beat them. Let's see. Well, they lost to the Vikings on the road, or at home, I should say. Maybe the Rams. Maybe say the Rams. Well, they won that game by 5. Maybe the Texans. Okay, well, they won that game by 2. Let's see. Maybe the Seahawks. They did blow out the Seahawks, but they didn't make the playoffs. Then they end their season losing 3 straight, 2 of which were in the division, and then the final one, of course, in the wild card round. And Jordan Love is a part of this. Like, full stop. Yeah, I'm not saying that you're stuck with him and that he's the worst quarterback ever. But I'm sorry. The way he was portrayed, it was to the point where it was like, oh my gosh, the NFC North is loaded in quarterback. You got Jared Goff and Jordan Love and Caleb Williams. Is like 2 out of those 3 guys aren't even in the playoffs anymore. Well, one of them didn't even make it. And that was Caleb Williams, of course. And, Sam Darnold, we'll get to him later. But Jordan Love, to me, like, I don't know how else to put it, but overpaid, I think, is certainly the metric. And I usually hate the overpaid thing, but, like, the guy had half a good year and is now getting paid more than Jared Goff, who is having if it weren't for guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen being absolute freaks of nature, in MVP season. And Jordan Love is not even close to that. Okay, if I were to just even, let me just see if I can let me see where he stands. NFL quarterback rankings 2024. Let's just see where he stands. Football Reference. I just want to see where he stands because I guarantee you it's not particularly high. So in yards, he is number. Wait for it. I'm looking for it. Oh, wow. This is bad. Wait, really? Wait. I must have missed him. Oh, there he is. He is number 19 in yards of all quarterbacks. That is below Kirk Cousins. That's below Kyler Murray. Now, look, yards is not the best thing, so let's just try pure passer rating. He's number 12. He is number 12, below Derek Carr. So, of course, not an amazing metric. There's no perfect way to measure these guys. But in many of the measurements, it's not great. All right? What about yards per game? Let's see, yards per game. All right. He's 16th. So obviously this is not exactly, 32 quarterbacks, but roughly speaking, at about average in yards per game. QBR, he is actually surprisingly pretty good. He's actually surprisingly pretty good in QBR. He's number 5. Not really sure what to make of that. That's about the only thing I can see where he's up there. Like yards per attempt, he's pretty high. Like the point is, when the moment needs him most, he goes out and he plays his worst games. Let me see if I can find his game logs. Let's see. I had his stat page open here on ESPN. I can find. Or you know what? Let me just pull up his game logs here because I'm on Football Reference. Let's see. 2024 game logs. I don't know why it goes back to 2021. Okay, here we go. So he was inactive, obviously, the first couple of weeks there after the injury against Philadelphia in Brazil. But then he had games against the Rams where he threw for less than 250 yards. He had the game against Jacksonville where he threw for less than 200 yards in a win. I wish they would show me. Oh, yeah, I thought show me the wins. So let's just see. In those, let's look at how he plays in losses, which obviously is not a perfect measure, but at least it gives you an idea of, when the lights are the brightest. Oh, geez, that is not what I wanted. Okay. So obviously that game against Detroit initially, that was a big bugaboo. He put up a lot of yards, but it was a lot of garbage time yards because that first half was not great. Put up a lot of yards in the, or no, he actually didn't put up a lot of yards in the first game or the last game against Detroit, but they ended up scoring a bunch of points, I think off of some turnovers, I want to say, by Detroit. And then obviously you had the awful performance against the Bears. He was hurt in that game, I believe. But that game was just so bad. It was so bad. And the terrible game against Minnesota. And of course, you top it all off with the terrible game against Philadelphia. All of this is to say, all of this, very rudimentary research is to say, you are in for lack of a better phrase, kind of stuck with this guy. And I don't know if he's going to turn out the way that many people immediately assumed he was going to be. It's just one of those things where we need to, as a society, as fans, we need to learn to pump the brakes. The same thing happened to CJ Stroud. Okay, I know it's hard. Same thing even happened to Bryce Young in the reverse. Maybe Bryce Young can turn it around. He kind of did a little bit in the tail end of the season. It's easy to bury guys early. And it's easy to praise guys early. But with Jordan Love, it's just every game this year where you think, okay, here comes Jordan Love. He's going to make his mark. He's going to show the world, and he's dead. And he didn't show up. He'll show up against the bad teams. He'll do that. He'll show up against teams that, you expect him to show up against. But the moments where he's got to play a tough team, he's got to, find his guys. Fortunately, he's throwing the ball to the other team much of the time. How many interceptions did he have on the year, by the way? If I might ask. I feel like he had a lot. He had 11. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's not great. You don't want that many interceptions. It's tied for 95th. What is of who? How many quarterbacks do they think there is? Are there that many quarterbacks? I guess there's a lot. Anyway. All right, that's all I got on that game. I got nothing else to say, so let's move along. All right, so Commies, Bucks. This was a classic, all right? This was a game that, was the Sunday night game, so NBC was taking a bit of a risk, I'd say, taking this game. You had two teams that I think in both cases most people would not put on the upper echelon, but they put on a show. I mean, it was back and forth. The Bucks had the lead. It looks like they were going to run away with it. The Commanders failing to convert on a lot of those fourth downs, but they take advantage of the Bucks' mistakes. Baker Mayfield with a brutal fumble at the end of that game. I hate it for him because I love Baker Mayfield. Brutal fumble, gives the ball right back. And even then, it took, took him into like a fourth down try to get that, touchdown there to tie the game, or to take the lead, I think, at that point. The Bucks then, or actually, yeah, take the lead, because I think it was, 20-17 at that point, and then they went down the field and tied it, and then it was final drive, and Jaden Daniels, man. You want to talk about rookie? Like, I don't know what it is about being the number 2 overall pick. Like, it's funny. It's funny how things like this, like, sort of change. So, back in the day, it used to be that if you were the number 1 pick, that like the pressure would like make you better in a sense. I think of like Peyton Manning, for example. Peyton Manning getting taken over Ryan Leaf, and Ryan Leaf completely like, falling to basically the, next man syndrome, right? Like that kind of unfortunate, psychological thing where you're like constantly comparing yourself to that guy taken ahead of you. And now it's like, I feel like it's probably better psychologically to be taken number 2. Like with Caleb, the last 2 number 1 overall picks, Bryce Young and Caleb Williams. Both those guys got taken by largely non-existent cultures, like teams with bad baggage and poor leadership and just bad all around. And you might say the same thing was the case with the Commanders when they took Jaden Daniels. And it kind of was, but you bring in Dan Quinn, you already have new ownership. I think they had a new general manager at that point as well. You bring in a lot of veterans. Guys like Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner on the defensive side. A lot of old heads, so to speak. I remember, this is funny, like looking back, just at, how good the Commanders ended up being. Like, I think it was a Reddit comment where someone said, like, the 2019, this would have been, like, the greatest roster ever. And it's funny because, yeah, I guess it probably would have been a much better roster in 2019. But, Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, and Austin Eckler, and Zach Ertz in your offensive fire and your offensive weapons. Now, is it world beating? No, but when you got a rookie quarterback who just needs a little bit of confidence, he needs like bodies, needs like actual human beings to be able to throw the ball to. Terry McLaurin is a threat. Okay, Scary Terry is one of the more underrated wide receivers, I think, in the league because he plays for Washington, and that's no fault of his own. Washington doesn't get a lot of national broadcast games. They're not a big market, which is ironic given it's the nation's capital. But Jaden Daniels, man, he is something else. And look, a little bit of a look ahead. This is the team that ended up getting matched up with the Lions. Now, full disclosure, I, of course, think the Lions are going to win this game. However, there's a couple of things to talk about here. He's shown an ability, Jaden Daniels has shown an ability to make large comebacks. He's shown an ability to move and make plays on his feet and be a bit of an innovator. And that can be a danger for Detroit. We saw how well Josh Allen played as an innovator against the Lions. Aaron Glenn is going to have to contain him. And I don't know how he's going to do it. And Aaron Glenn's a fine coordinator. He's been able to outmaneuver these guys before. I want to say this is the first rookie quarterback that we've had to play this year, I think. That can't be right. It might be. I guess Caleb Williams. Yeah, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? Caleb Williams. We had to play him. What was this? Oh, okay. I thought maybe I saw an MLB notification. I thought maybe something happened. But yeah, he's a good quarterback. And he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. He probably already has. At this point, I don't know how the voting works or when the voting actually happens. But he's a very good quarterback. On the other end of it, the Commanders have the 3rd worst running defense in the league. And that might be a problem in and of itself because you have to deal with Jahmyr Gibbs. But it's even further of a problem. Dave Montgomery is back. And this, to me, is going to change things completely. Dave Montgomery, who, for a point, we thought he was done. He was never coming back, and that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back. He doesn't get the season-ending surgery. He gets that third opinion or whatever, and it ends up being okay. And then he was a full participant in practice today. The Commanders are going to walk into Ford Field with a now rejuvenated David Montgomery, a fully rejuvenated Alex Anzalone, who just had a great game against Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, and a defense and offense, frankly, that is going to be fully rested, fully ready to go. I can't imagine we're going to be looking at a whole lot on our injury reserve or on our injury list going into this game on Saturday. I'm not saying it's going to be, an easy victory for the Lions because this is the playoffs. There's no such thing as an easy victory. But when I look ahead, okay, and I see, let me just double check it. I'm pretty sure, let's take a look. Right now, the spread on ESPN Bet is Detroit minus 9.5 in a playoff game. ESPN Analytics has the Lions at a 73% chance to win a playoff game, a trip to the NFC Championship game for the second straight season. Okay? The Lions have never been to two straight NFC Championship games. And yet they are 9.5-point favorites. They're going in. It's at home. This crowd is going to be absolutely bananas. It's going to be a zoo in the city of Detroit on Saturday night. I can't imagine that a rookie quarterback is going to come in and be able to not feel a little bit of the pressure. And we've seen him, play not well. There was that stretch there in the middle of the year where the Commanders were just kind of getting by. They weren't really winning games. They lost to the Eagles in their first matchup, and kind of a bad performance from Daniels overall. He's not immune to bad games. However, he does appear to be immune to, the typical rookie problems, which is, turning the ball over or what's another one? Not being able to play in the clutch. He's been able to do that. He seems like he's already kind of gotten over a lot of the lumps that most rookies will have to get over. And there's still a lot of time for his career. I loved him coming out of college. I thought there was a part of me that thought he was going to be better than Caleb Williams, but I wasn't fully confident in that. And I'm still not fully confident in that at the end of it. We'll see. But as it stands, it looks a lot better for Detroit going into this game, especially with Montgomery coming back and especially with more of the defense coming back. I'm pretty sure Ennis Rakestraw could potentially be back. That'd be a big add-on to that secondary, which could use extra bodies for sure. It feels like things are moving in favor of Detroit for this matchup. And I don't want to completely write off the Commanders. There's a part of me that's like, okay, you have to, we fans have to understand they are going to score points. However, if the Lions get ahead of this game early, and if they can really bury them, if they can take advantage of mistakes made by the Commanders, like if they fail to convert on a fourth down, or if they fail to score points, or whatever, the kicker misses a field goal, whatever the case may be, Lions have to take advantage. You have to control time possession. You cannot give you cannot give Jaden Daniels the football in a one-score game late in this game. I don't feel comfortable with it. Maybe it works out anyway. These games are usually always close, but that spread minus 9.5, again, according to ESPN Bet, if you value spreads, and I'm not a gambling man, but I value it from a information standpoint. How the advantage seems to be stacked. Detroit is going to be going into this game as big favorites, but I still feel like they're going to be thinking, okay, we want to make a statement, because right now a lot of the media narrative is focused on this great story for Washington Commanders and how Jaden Daniels is a rookie and he's doing all these things. He's a rookie winning a playoff game on the road of all places. Why not us kind of thing. Like you don't want to give them life, basically. You just want to shut them down and shut them down early. So, yeah. I said I wasn't really going to rant or give much of a game preview, but here I am giving a game preview. So, look, I do think the Lions are going to win, but I would not be surprised if Jaden Daniels didn't make us sweat and didn't make Ford Field hold their breath, because He's definitely capable of making games uncomfortably close. So. The Red Wings are down 2-1. They have a power play here. They can tie it up here in the second period. Oh, passing from Kane. Is that Tarasenko or Gustafson? I don't know. I get some of these guys mixed up. No, okay, that was fun. That was a fun power play, guys. All right, back to losing, I guess. Oh man, I can feel my face getting congested here a little bit. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna blow out some of this congestion that has been seeping into my brain just so that I can sound like I can still breathe. So I'll be right back. All right. So there is one game left that we have to talk about, guys. There's one. All right. And I take no pleasure in this. All right. I'm a man of honor and dignity, and I would never take pleasure in another team and another fan base's stuff. I would never do that. Except when it's the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings decided to have what is possibly the two most catastrophic weeks of football that I have ever seen in my entire life. Scoring a grand total of 18 points in the last 2 weeks and just one touchdown in those 2 weeks. Sam Darnold decided he no longer wants to play football for money. I have never in my life. It's crazy. When you go back, after they beat Green Bay, that was their Super Bowl. That was Minnesota's Super Bowl. They had they doused Sam Darnold with the Gatorade and all that, and they raised him up. Darnold. And then he was like, all right, that's it. That's where the movie ends. It's like the end of Moneyball when you find out that the team doesn't even win the World Series. That's what this was. You go out. You win 14 games in regular season. You are 1 win away from a division title. Okay? You are 1 win away from the number 1 seed in the NFC and hosting the playoffs all the way into the Super Bowl, assuming you win the division round. And you go out. And first, you lose to Detroit. And that was bad enough because Sam Darnold played an awful game. Sunday night, lights on, everybody's watching. All right. Couldn't be much worse. Until Sam Darnold decided, you know what? I'm going to make it even worse. I'm going to throw interception. I'm going to turn the ball over for a scoop and score. I'm going to get sacked. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8. But 9 times. 9 times? I didn't think you could. That's That's like the entire defense. Like everybody on the defense must have sacked you. Like I actually am curious who on the defense did not get a sack. Okay, you had Gallimore with a sack and a half. You had Byron Young with a sack and a half. You had Michael Hock with half a sack. Braden Fisk with half a sack. Surprisingly, Jared Verse did not get credited a sack. Kobe Durant got a sack. It's like everybody. That's like basically everybody. Like, here's the thing. All right. Now, for a lot of people in the NFL media world, and a lot of people in the fandom world, there was a sense, all right, that Minnesota, they're for real. And this happens seemingly every year, where there is this team where, you watch them and you're like, I don't know. You're like Tony Romo. You're like, I don't know, Jim. I don't know. But like it's like, no, man, they're scary. And this seems to happen, especially at least with the Lions and their kind of like the sports media around the Detroit area, is where it's like every week, it's like the team that the Lions are playing, like, unless it's like the Jaguars or something or the Titans, it's like, oh, you better, this is the game where, they're finally going to get exposed. This is the game. Watch out. And it happens like, every so often where they actually do. Most of the time it's not the case. But in this case, with Minnesota, I will admit, I thought, you know what, they're a pretty good team. I didn't feel great picking the Rams last week. I did think they were going to win because I felt like Matthew Stafford and that offense was just going to connect more. I didn't expect it to look like this. All right. I didn't expect Sam Darnold to go out there and look like peak Jets Sam Darnold, where lights are brightest. Like, it's funny. People were talking about how much money did he just cost himself, realistically. Like, those last two games, if he didn't play, like if he got hurt in the Green Bay game and he just didn't play these next couple of games, how much money? Like 100 million? 110 million? Heaven forbid a team paid him 120 million? I mean, look at some of the teams around the league that need quarterbacks. Look at the Giants, Saints, Las Vegas Raiders, Titans. A lot of teams desperate for quarterbacks. He could have gotten a bag. Instead, he might get a backup deal. Maybe on a practice squad. Maybe he'll sign another 1-year deal for like $5 million or whatever. How much he's getting paid? Maybe a little less than that. Or like $1 million. 1 year, $1 million. We'll give you $1 million, Sam. It's like guy for like 4,000 yards. We'll give you $1 million. We'll give you $1 million. It's what else is a crazy stat? The Vikings this year, they lost what was it? A total of 3 games. Yeah, 3 games, 14-3. Let me name you the teams that they lost to. The Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions. Now, wait a minute. You're probably saying to yourself, now, wait a minute. You said they had 3 losses. Yep. They lost to 2 teams. They get 3 losses. In total, counting the postseason, they lost 4 games. So, 2 teams beat them 4 times in total. I got to tell you, I've watched a lot of football. I've never seen anything like that. It's happened before. The Jacksonville Jaguars back in like the early or maybe late 90s or early 2000s. I don't remember. I wasn't alive or physically able to care. I want to say it was like they had a year where they lost only to the Tennessee Titans the entire year. Like it was similar to where they went like 14-2 and they lost to the playoffs to the Titans. Like, I think that was the 2000 year. I think. I could be wrong on that. I think it was the 2000 year. Like, it does happen, but it's so rare. And I hate to do this. I just hate to do that because I'm just such a nice guy and I would never want to do TJ Hawkins. He's finally ready to win some games. Anytime you want to start, Teej. Anytime. We're waiting. Anytime you want to start winning meaningful games. Anytime you want to start winning the division. Anytime you want to do things, go ahead. Was that in the No, that was way before Saxonville. It was way before. This was like Brunell. This was like Mark Brunell was the quarterback for Jacksonville. This was like I guess Saxonville was a good time for them, but that was only 1 year. This was like an era of pretty good Jacksonville football. People forget in the late 90s and the early 2000s, Jacksonville was actually a pretty good team. Like fairly consistently in the playoffs, I want to say. Anyway, this isn't a Jacksonville topic. I just, I hate, again, to just rub the salt in the wound. But I was saying all year, I don't believe this Minnesota team is for real. They're beating teams, but they're not really beating teams. I mean, let's go back and take a look, because there's going to be people who say, oh my gosh, how could this team, they won 14 games? How could they lose in the first round? Well, let's see. You barely beat the Bears on the road. You barely beat the Seahawks on the road, two teams that did not make the playoffs. You barely beat the Packers at home. You get the doors knocked off of you by the Lions. You also lose to the Lions at home in a game that was close, but really only was close because we let them get close. You barely beat the Colts at home. You won one of the ugliest games of football ever played against the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. Speaking of Jacksonville, like, the fact is, you really took advantage of a lot of bad competition pretty early and set a picture in people's minds where they blew the doors off of the Giants and then blew the doors off off the Texans, and then got the win over the Packers. It was like, oh, maybe Sam Darnold's actually good. Maybe this is where he's going to get his career renaissance. And then they lost the Lions, lost the Rams, and then they did this thing where they played a bunch of garbage teams. Like, let's see. After they lost to the Rams, you want me to name all the teams that they beat that won or played in the playoffs? Let's count them, all right? Are you ready? Here we go. 1. Hold on, let's try that again. Okay. So let's see. The Colts, well, no, they didn't make the playoffs. The Jaguars, they definitely didn't make the playoffs. Titans, they got the number 1 overall pick, so they certainly didn't make the playoffs. The Bears they didn't make the playoffs. Cardinals, they didn't make the playoffs. Falcons also, they just missed out on the playoffs. They could have made the playoffs, but they just missed out on it. The Bears again, we already talked about them. And Seahawks, they also barely missed out, but they still missed out. And there's the Packers. All right, there's one. They got one, and then they got blown out by the Lions. So, it's kind of a fun thing, but it's one of those things, and what's so beautiful about it is that, despite the fact that they won all these games, they got nothing to show for it. They got nothing to put in the banners. They got no division title to go with it. They got no mini movie they can make out of this. They got no, playoff run. They got no MVP season. Basically, all they got is a weird blip in the radar where a journeyman quarterback has a really good year because they got a good coach and they got really good weapons. But a journeyman quarterback, a playoff run does not make. I don't know if I used that phrase correctly, but it's just crazy. It's just crazy because all year, I remember watching a video. I think it was KTO talking about how Sam Darnold's playing, this crazy good football. We'll see if he ends up keeping it. And it was like basically since he posted that video, Sam Darnold just died. He just decided he didn't want to play football anymore. So, I wonder if he's going to stick around in Minnesota or if he's going to end up being a backup. Where I feel like he's going to end up? And I feel bad for saying this. He's going to be a New Orleans Saint. They're going to sign him to like a 2-year deal because they're done with Derek Carr. That experiment is over. They need to move on to another quarterback who had mediocre success at best in his career. They got to bring in the Darnold. Now that's a subreddit that I want to know. I want to know their reaction. 820 is 420 somewhere. I don't even know what that means. Is that I don't even know what that means. Hold on, am I out of the loop, Mark? I have no clue what that means. Am I missing something? I don't know. Anyway, moving along. All right. So that's pretty much the NFL wildcard weekend in a roughly 1 hour rant. Wow, I really talked a lot there. So in other NFL news, though, we got to talk about this because there was a couple of there was a hiring and then there was a firing, although not an official firing. The Patriots hire Mike Vrabel. I'm going to be upset when I see him at the Mike convention. Patriots hire Mike Vrabel. I think this was basically this was too good to be, or not too good to be true. This was too obvious. Like, once they got rid of Mayo, it was like, okay, they got to have probably Vrabel right there on the docket. And not that long after that, they announced that they're hiring Vrabel, former Patriot, obviously pretty successful with the Titans, at least as far as success with the Titans goes. I don't know how great of a coach he is going to be in the long term for them. I think he's a good culture fit. He's a culture builder. Obviously, you saw those teams in Tennessee. They were the number 1 seed a few years ago. People forget. Sometimes I forget. They were the number 1 seed not that long ago. Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill kind of recreated himself there, and so maybe I was gonna say Tannehill. Maybe Vrabel will be able to build that kind of a thing in New England. We'll see. I think they run a pretty tight ship there. Obviously, they don't particularly enjoy failure in New England, Robert Kraft. So I think it's probably a pretty good hire. It's a safe hire. And sometimes those work. Sometimes they blow up in your face. So we'll see. Now, this I got to talk about because this to me, this is like last year with the Pistons, and it just seemed like nothing could be done right. The Cowboys parted ways with Mike McCarthy. Now it's amazing. I have been saying basically since they lost to the Lions, the Cowboys have to fire Mike McCarthy. He's terrible. Okay, he can be a good regular season coach. He can win a bunch of meaningless games, but he's terrible. He's not a good coach. He's not a good coach when you need him. He's not a good coach in the clutch. He's just not good. And yet they keep him along. They drag him along in a year where bad gets worse. Dak Prescott goes down. CeeDee Lamb goes down. You're basically playing with a preseason squad, and it's just a complete mockery. It's terrible. Would they end up 7-10, something like that? I think they were even worse. Whatever the record ended up being, they were terrible. And then they deny Mike McCarthy a right to interview with the Bears. They say, no, you are not to interview with the Bears. You are not to lead. Now, the Bears have a chance to do the funniest thing in the world, by the way. I'm a big fan of Mike. And at that point, you're like, okay, well, they're denying him interviews, so that basically is a sign, okay, they're going to keep him along. And then Tom Pelissero comes out and is like, actually, they have parted ways. Now, for those of you who have not been in sports for a very long time, the term parted ways is like the family-friendly, the politically correct version of just saying you're fired or we don't want to pay you that much because we don't think you're very good, which is a nice way of saying you're fired. If you go to your boss, right? And I don't recommend necessarily you do this. It's not advice. If you go to your boss and you say, "Hey boss, what do you think of doubling my salary?" And your boss says, No, not going to happen. What about any kind of raise? No, not going to happen. That is potentially a nice way of saying, we value you as little as you are currently being valued. And in this case, it might have been even worse because they might have been negotiating a contract that would have been lower than what he is currently making, which is too much. I will say, though, it does seem to me that the Cowboys are so dysfunctional that they can't even fire their coaches right. You know what you do to Mike McCarthy if you are done with him and you don't think it's going to work out? You fire him in the middle of the season. Like a man. You fire him and you just say, you know what? It's not working. The team is not having success. We're going to start over next year. So we're going to let you go and see maybe if we have somebody in-house that we like better. What you don't do is you don't drag this out like it's like he's your best friend and you just want to see him, get to the end and maybe he can regain his. It's like, no, that's not what you do. It's like you just got to rip off the Band-Aid. You just got to tell him, coach, you are not our guy. And they couldn't do it. And now they're also in a weird spot because they can't even, but all that time that they could have spent potentially looking for a replacement for McCarthy, that theoretically you could be doing during the middle of the season when you're basically like, okay, we can evaluate what we got now, but we can also, look outside and see what else is going on. You wasted all that time keeping McCarthy, even with the sense that maybe you thought you were going to just pay him whatever you thought, and now you got stuck with egg on your face because I don't know if you're probably not going to get Ben Johnson, right? Because now you got to wait until after the season potentially to interview him, which, depending on if the Lions win the Super Bowl, that could be as late as February. And at that point, he might have already made a decision. Other teams might have already made offers to him to that point. Like, you're kind of in a rough spot for there. You're also, in a rough spot in that, like, okay, other coaches are seeing how you handled this and are like, well, I don't want to be a part of that. So now you're basically like, you've put yourself into a spot where you are not only in a bad spot from the team standpoint because the players, the team itself is not very good, and professionally, you treat your coaches like they're, chopped liver. Like, you don't have any standards for how you treat that. Like, if you were going to fire him, if you were going to not pay him whatever it was he wanted, then why did you keep him along? Why did you string him into this belief, into thinking that his job is secure? So I don't think Mike McCarthy is a particularly good coach, but he's been in the league for a much longer time than, as a head coach for a much longer time than me and much longer time than a lot of people. So he's got to have something, in his toolbox. Albeit, that something might actually just end up being, the one Super Bowl that he did win with Green Bay. But yeah, it's a mess in Dallas. It's truly beyond parody. And, I said it last year and I'll say it again. They're not a real football franchise. This is not how you run a football franchise. This is a brand. This is nothing more than a complete, like, media move. Like, you don't actually care about the product on the field. You care about putting up an image of a football team. You're an imitation of a football team. Kind of smells like Dallas already knows who the next coach is, probably Dion, and only when you lock up anything else, then you can let the old girl go. Would have kept Mike if Dion said no, probably. Here's the thing. If Deion Sanders is your coach, you might as well just say you don't care about football. Like, you might as well just say you're only here for media and, popular and trying to win the offseason and drama and storylines. Like, I'm sorry, but 13-12 in Colorado when and most of those wins coming in your second year when you have 2 Heisman, 2 top 5 picks on your team, one of which is your son. No, there's not a whole lot of evidence that he can coach at the NFL. There's not even really necessarily a whole lot of evidence that he can coach at the college level. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's no reason if they hire Deion Sanders and if he takes that job. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? That like, you want to talk about hatred? Deion Sanders, if he knows his best interest, he should not take the job because from a media perspective, from a fan perspective, I would say this: you do not want to ruin your reputation amongst Cowboys fans. Cowboys fans probably have a really high reputation of Deion Sanders. Obviously, won a Super Bowl with them. You don't want to turn into, like where you are now public enemy number one, where you are a joke and people just hate you, not only from just the job you're doing, but from the personality that you're putting out there. It's bad. Say it again. The Cowboys are the end of the Mikey Ilitch Tigers. Anything to win one, anything at all, swing and a miss. See, at least with Mike Ilitch, like the moves are more defensible. It's like the Cowboys, like they didn't make moves. What did they do this offseason? This was all in, according to Jerry Jones. And all in turned into Ezekiel Elliott. Turned into paying Dak and CeeDee Lamb the day of the season opener. It was a joke. It was laughable. I don't understand. I simply do not understand. I'll take it because I hate the Cowboys, but it's terrible. It's terrible for the many Cowboys fans, as there are a lot. Enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed those 90s championships, because as long as Jerry Jones is running things, those are all you're going to get. Is that karma? I just immediately get water just splattered onto my face, I guess onto my body. That's wonderful. What's the problem with these gigantic water bottles? It's like you're trying to pour it, and so like you're pouring it, and then it all just like splashes down. So that's good. That's all right. Nobody even noticed. So the Red Wings still losing here, 2-1. About to be the end of the second period. See, like, it's funny because we have a Red Wings segment, and it's going to be, I want to be positive, but now I got to be sad. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Talent in Colorado is not accelerating, even with the top draft picks. The Buffs didn't make the 12. So Dion is going to quickly become irrelevant anyway. So instead, let's go rebuild Dallas. I mean, like, the thing is he capable of doing that? I don't know that he's capable of building a team in college. Like, maybe in a small school, in a small environment like he did in Jackson State, and in a fluky way with Colorado. Like, look, there's a reason that I think he has said before that he's not interested in an NFL job. And I think it's because he just can't do what he does in college and the pros. So if he does take that job, I'm telling you, from my own perspective, it'd be a disaster. And you know what? I root for it in as much as it would be a disaster, because that would be fun for me. But no, I just don't see the match there. I just don't. Speaking of college football, let's move on to that briefly. So, first things first, we got to talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame making the college football national championship and doing it at the cost of my favorite man in the whole wide world, James Franklin. Oh, James. Oh, James. Winning at the half, 10-3, 10-10 after 3. Has a chance to do it all. And then it all comes crumbling down for little James. Big game, little James. Big game, little James. Once again, James Franklin does the James Franklin thing and loses these games. And you know what's even better about this? This is why, in a sense, I was happy that Penn State got as far as they did, because now he's got a Final Four berth. They got to keep this guy around forever. So for as long as we will see James Franklin is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. He's going to play Ohio State next year, I think. Or he's going to play Michigan or any of these teams. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to lose. And you know what? You know what? He might win enough games to where, okay, he's going to make the playoff. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to lose. And at every play, it never gets old. It's so delicious every time to the point where I'm like, you know what? Keep him forever. Keep him forever and ever. He's great. Every time I look at his face, I'm just like, oh, this guy's never going to win anything. He looks like my middle school football coach. That's not a joke, actually. He does look a lot like my middle school football coach. Like, almost spookily. Like, it's like, do we know it's the same guy? Their connection. But on the other end, Notre Dame, they didn't play a great game, but they played the game they needed to play, which was just good enough. And in that fourth quarter, major comeback, massive comeback. And then obviously, I believe they had the game winner there at the very end. I think it was a game winner. Now I'm like blanking on this game. Wasn't it a game winner? Was it a game winner? Riley Leonard runs for first down. Yeah. It was a game winner. Yeah, it was a game winner. Okay, I just wanted to be sure. For some reason, I blanked on that. So, on Notre Dame's front, they played an exciting game, and you know what's funny? It's funny. As soon as we get to the Final Four, that's when the good games start. Huh? That's kind of odd. Who knows? Now, on the other end of it, speaking of rooting for chaos, Ohio State has the chance to do the funniest thing in the world. The absolute funniest thing in the world. And it's not funny to most people, but it's funny to me. As a Michigan State fan, I hate Michigan. And I hope Michigan has nothing but sadness and sorrow in their sports. I hope they lose every game they play by a million. And I hope I don't know, they slip on a banana peel too. Not serious injury, but funny injury. Funny injury. Not serious. Not anything you got to go to the hospital for. Not anything like that. Funny injury. Anyway. Quinn Ewers did Quinn Ewers things, which is to say not play well in a clutch time spot. And it's just, I kind of feel bad for Texas in a sense because it's like, this just feels like it's becoming a little bit of a repeated pattern, at least over the past couple of years. Get to the Final Four, choke it away. In this past year, get to the SEC championship, choke it away. It's like, at a certain point, what are we doing, Texas? Like, when are you going to get over the hump here? Now, on Ohio State's side, Will Howard played a pretty good game, 289 yards, touchdown. The main story of the game is the touchdown return by, what's his name? Jack Sawyer, right? Jack Sawyer? Yeah, Jack Sawyer. Fumble recovery for a touchdown. Crazy play in a Final Four game. And now, we have set up for ourselves what is the best possible national championship from my perspective in a myriad of ways. For one, we have chaos because we have no SEC teams, so that's fun. And you have an independent team in Notre Dame making the national championship. And even further, Ohio State in the national championship. Now, as a Michigan hater myself, I must say, the NCAA, I know they don't have no power over the CFP, but they've done a heck of a job with this punishment because no matter who wins, Michigan loses. Either the old rival of Michigan, Notre Dame, they're not really a rivalry anymore because they don't want to play them anymore. And that's on both ends. For whatever reason, both these teams don't want to play each other anymore. I don't know why. They just don't. But then on the other end, Ryan Day and Ohio State have a chance to immediately remove any bragging rights that Michigan fans want to have over Ohio State about national championships. Now, you might say, well, Michigan has won, 4 in a row against Ohio State, and they just beat this Ohio State team. So basically, what you're telling me, implicitly, Michigan fans, is beating Ohio State is your national championship. That's basically what you're saying. What you're saying is, oh, well, we beat them, so who cares? I don't care if they win that. It's like, okay, well, then fine. That's your national championship. It's so ironic to just have the tables turned in such a way to where now, like, you got these Michigan fans who are just coping with oh, well, we got Bryce Underwood. Well, we got, we beat them and things. And we beat Alabama. And Jim Harbaugh made the playoffs. I don't know why that's indicative of us, but whatever. Like, I just gotta sit back and watch. Because you know what? I don't want any of this. Okay, if it was up to me, national championship game would have been Oregon and would have been Georgia. But that was me. That was me. That was me being old school BCS. National championship is between the two best teams, and you had an undefeated team in Oregon that ended up losing a game they shouldn't have been playing. And then Notre Dame, this could have been the Rose Bowl potentially. That would have been a nice Rose Bowl. I guess maybe you would have said maybe a Pac-12 team, but Oregon was in the national championship, so you wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah, this could have been a nice Rose Bowl. Maybe you had Texas and Penn State in the Orange Bowl. You could do that. Yeah, you could do that. Maybe Boise State plays Arizona State. Huh. Either way. All that being said, I'm just happy that no matter who wins, Michigan loses. And that's really all I can ask for. Because certainly I get nothing out of Michigan State. So I might as well get something out of these guys. I guess I will be rooting for Notre Dame just because, again, chaos. But the other question I had about this, because we've reached the end of the first ever 12-team college football playoff, and I just ask, was it worth it? We got, let's see, 1, 2, 3. 3 good games overall. You had some other games that maybe at times were sort of entertaining. Notre Dame, Georgia was kind of entertaining. Even to some extent, I can't really defend any of these other games. Those are the only 3 games. You got 3 games, which is the amount of games you got before in the old playoff. And now we'll see if we even get a 4th. If we end up, think about this. If this game ends up being a blowout one way or the other, okay? If we end up basically where we have 3 good games, which was the maximum amount of good games we could have had before, did we even need to do all of this? And on top of the fact that we got an 8 seed and a 7 seed making it, which already begs the question, well, wait, how did we decide these seedings that these teams got in with such, such various, it's as if the seeding didn't even indicate the team, because obviously Notre Dame was stacked up against Indiana in the first round. That's a fairly even matchup, 10-7, I'd say. You'd think that'd be fairly even. But then they beat Georgia because Georgia doesn't have a quarterback. Okay, not Notre Dame's fault. And then they end up with the 6 seed against Penn State because the 3 seed Boise State, who was never really in the same camp as a Penn State or as a Ohio State or any of these Power 5 teams, okay, well then you basically just gave Notre Dame the path to the championship. And then with the 5 seed with Texas, you set them up where they get an Arizona State team, which frankly gave them a run for their money, but that was, a lot of just Texas just collapsing. And they ultimately did end up winning the game. And then number 8 seed in Ohio State, they get a second shot at a team they played already in the Big Ten, but this time in a neutral site. I don't know. The whole thing to me, it just reeks like they're just trying to do what the NFL does, but the problem is you can't do what the NFL does because college is so vastly different. It's not 32 teams in 4 or 8 divisions, I should say. It's 120 some teams in 5, maybe at this point 4 conferences that are made up of different amounts of teams, a lot of them with no divisions. Like, it's like apples to oranges. The only thing that's similar about the sports is that they're playing the game. They're playing the same game. I don't know. It's just, they've gotten rid of pretty much everything that made college football unique and fun, and just sort of tried to implant the NFL onto it as if that was going to be a successful recipe. And I just don't know that it is. The games themselves, you can take them or leave them. It's the very fact that it's like this that I think turns a lot of people off, myself included. And it doesn't help that, the team that I root for isn't very good and really doesn't stand much of a shot in an environment like this. But, yeah, so there's your college football. There you go. Oh, gosh. I gotta tell you guys. I do feel a lot better than I did, around this time last week, or especially Wednesday. But this, congestion all up in my face region, not it. It's just not it. Let's see. What do we want to talk? Do we want to do Red Wings or do we want to do Pistons? Because we're gonna talk positively about both. I don't know who I want to talk about first. You know what? We'll just talk about the Red Wings first. How about that? We'll talk about the Red Wings first because I had them first on my list. So, normally when I talk about the Red Wings, it's negative. It's angry. It's me getting on Red Wings fans for being too positive and being too complicit. This time, however, I have to say, 7 straight wins, I don't care who you're playing. That gets my attention. And furthermore, it gets the attention of the NHL standings. Because right now, you are currently 2 points out of a wild card spot. Now, granted, right now they're playing the San Jose Sharks. They're down 2-1. If they can come back and win this game, I believe they would then leapfrog Columbus, who is currently in that number 2 wild card spot, and end up in the wild card of their own and win their 8th in a row. It's hard to win 8 in a row. Again, I don't care who you're playing. It's hard to win 8 in a row. So, I mean, I'll be upset if they don't win this game against San Jose because it's San Jose and it's in your house and they're one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. They're one of the worst teams in the NHL. You got to be able to beat this team. I don't know what voodoo magic the San Jose Sharks have on us where they just always seem to beat us. Whatever. We'll talk about it later. I got to say, when the hiring of McClellan happened, there was a part of me that was like, okay, well, they got a guy. The Red Wings hired a new guy, and, well, we'll see if it ends up working out. And there was a part of me after that first game where the Maple Leafs went in and knocked your doors off in embarrassing fashion right after Christmas. Merry Christmas, and you're dead to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I was like, okay, well, that was not fun. Then they beat the Washington Capitals, who to that point were a pretty good team. I was like, oh. And they still are a pretty good team. I was like, oh, all right, that's pretty impressive. Then on New Year's Eve, they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's 2 in a row. All right, 2 in a row. You can build off of that. 2 in a row then became 3 in a row when you beat Columbus on the road, who, again, at that point was, and still is a pretty good team. I was like, okay. You got Winnipeg on the road. This is a game. Okay, you know what? I can write this in as a loss. Maybe if you get to overtime, you get a point, and then you win. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, that's 4 in a row. And then you're like, okay, we get a break until Tuesday. We got Ottawa at home, and we win that game in overtime. And then you're like, okay, well, you look ahead, you got Chicago, and Chicago's terrible, so you're going to win that game, and you do. And then you're looking at 6 in a row. And then you're like, okay, well, we got Seattle on Sunday, another home game, and you blow the doors off of them. You're up 4-0 in the first period. And you're like, oh my gosh, we won 7 straight, and we are now 2 points out of the wild card. That is coaching. that is the players stepping up. That is just everything showing a marked signs of improvement. That is this team playing to the potential that they actually have. And remember what Steve Yzerman said during his press conference when McClellan was brought out, was that, if everything goes according to plan this year, this team, he expected to be able to make a wild card spot. And right now, things seemingly going according to plan, Steve Yzerman might be correct. Now, it's also noted that it's not simply the coach. It's also some of these players stepping up. In this 7-game stretch, Eric Gustafson has really turned it on. He's got 11 points on the year. Most of those points coming this past 7 games. You even got Marco Casper, who's been turning it on as well. What's his name? Albert Johansson coming in on defense for an injured Jeff Petrie. And, he got his first NHL goal. He's been involved on some of the plays there defensively. Look, Jeff Petrie went down and Albert Johansson had to step in. If I'm Steve Yzerman, if I'm Tom McClellan, I don't want to see Jeff Petrie ever again. I'm done with him. Albert Johansson, whether he's a future, whether he's Nick Lindstrom or Carter Mazer, not Carter Mazer, Cal McCarr. I don't know why I had Carter Mazer on my mind. Whether it's Cal McCarr or any of these guys, he's got to be your future, right? You took him. He was a late round pick. He's got to be your guy. Let's stick to him, right? Let's stick with him. Let's do it. Albert Johansson is the guy, and Simon Edvinsson, another one. He's another young defenseman. He's now 8th on the team in points. He's got 16 points on the year. He's another one of those guys that's just, his defense has been improving. He's a +6 player on the ice. Your top guys are improving. I still have some fears about some of the depth, but your top guys are playing elite. Lucas Raymond might get 90 points this year, right? Dylan Larkin really started to turn on. Shout out Patrick Kane. Patty Kane, who up to probably late December was having an awful start to the year, was unplayable. He has really turned it on, and he's become a goal scorer again. In the power play, in overtime, he's become that guy again. So for the time being, the culture has seemed to have moved in the right direction. Now, again, right now they're losing this game to the Sharks. You don't want to just say it all gets thrown out if you lose this game to the Sharks, but it just feels like this is a game. If you win this, if you get 8 in a row, you get yourself into that wild card spot. You really secure some ground for yourself. And to me, this is the direction the team needs to be going. As I say that, the Sharks actually just score. It's now 3-1. Okay, well, throw this game in the garbage, basically, because apparently you cannot beat the San Jose. Why can't we beat the San Jose Sharks? Why? Why are we incapable of beating this garbage team? Every time we play them, they murder us. Anyway. All this is to say, I'm not going to say that, Steve Yzerman and ownership and all them get like a pass now because, we figured it out. The problem was coaching. Yes, the problem was coaching. Wasn't the whole problem. Still a lot of games to play. Still a lot of holes to fill. And still a lot of players that are just not doing a whole lot for you. You can come back and win this game against San Jose. You can, if you can win some games, maybe you're not supposed to. I mean, looking ahead at their schedule, it's not going to get much easier coming, from this point onward. This is your final home game of a 4-game home set. You got 4 games on the road. You got at Florida, at Tampa Bay, at Dallas, at Philadelphia. Outside of Philadelphia, I'm pretty sure all of those teams are in the playoffs. Florida is, Tampa Bay is, and Dallas is. Philadelphia is the only team of those 4 in that road trip that is not in the playoffs. That's going to be a tough stretch. If you can come out of that stretch on the road, let's say you win 2 out of those 3, and maybe on the third, you get a point from an overtime. That's pretty successful as far as I'm concerned. If you win 3 out of those 4, then you're going to be in the wild card. There's no doubt about it at that point. You win 3 out of those 4. If you win 4 out of those 4, then we're not just talking about a new coaching bump. We're talking about a team that actually was really good that the head coach prior had been just sabotaging, essentially. The rest of the month, it's not easy, even still. You have 3 games at home after that against the Canadians, against the Lightning again, and then against the Kings at home, and then you end the month with the Oilers on the road. None of those games appear to me to be easy, especially if you can't even beat the Sharks. like all of these games, given now this bump, okay, and now I'm like, okay, well, frankly, now I'm open to let's see what these games are. And like every day, you're gonna get closer and closer to that deadline. And Steve Yzerman infamously has not really done a whole lot of positives to the deadline. He's traded away guys. He's done that. He's never really done the buy. And whether or not this team is good enough to buy, whether or not, it's, strategically sound to buy, the fact is, if you're close to that wild card spot, the question is going to be asked, is this real? And Steve Yzerman is going to have to answer that with his actions. Last year, he didn't really do much. And it turned out that whatever it was last year, it just wasn't real. This year, I mean, maybe if you want to really spark this thing, if you really want to push the rebuild forward a little bit faster than maybe you're comfortable doing, maybe you package up some of those prospects and you go out and you get a superstar on a bad team. I don't know who those guys are. I'm not that big in hockey. All right. I don't know who's available. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody. Sure, somebody's really good in a bad team that you can go out and get. I'm sure there's somebody that can fulfill a role, that can fit a culture that you're trying to build here. As it stands now, this Red Wings team has impressed me, but I'm not in yet. If you can get yourself into that wild card spot, we'll be in. As it stands right now, you're still on the outside looking in. That can change, right? And it appears that Tom McClellan has sparked something, at least in as much as it's shown this team is capable of putting together a win streak that is more than 2 games in a row, right? If he can keep this momentum, if he can keep the throttle down on this team, then maybe just by sheer, ruthless aggression, they can get in. Why is my phone getting blown up? Oh, okay. That's crazy. Anyway, if Tom McClellan and this roster, which again is very top heavy, again, outside of Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, Mo Seider, and Patrick Kane, and maybe you throw in Edvinson in there. It's a lot of mismatch. It's a lot of, what do you really do around here, Michael Rasmussen? What exactly do you do around here, Vladimir Tarasenko? You're gonna need a little bit. You're gonna need a little bit of bump, and you're gonna need your stars, your Lucas Raymonds, your Dylan Larkins to go out and perform at a high level. And you're also probably gonna need a little bit of luck from the other team. So I'm not in the mine cart right now. I'm not let's load and let's go. But I'm also not in, let's abandon ship, because you don't just win 7 in a row because you get lucky. That just doesn't happen, especially not in the NHL. You win 7 in a row because you got that potential and because you got a leader and a coach who can get you there. Whether or not it is just a blip on the radar at the end of it, we'll see. I tend to think that it could be a sign of at least, this being the right guy at head coach. But as quickly as things can change in the positive direction, they can quickly change in the negative direction. So it's at least been fun. We'll see if it lasts. I need to stop putting ice in this, because that's what's doing it. It's the ice will just come down and it'll just spray me with water. Hey, look, there's Jason Benetti. He doesn't get a suite. Why does Benetti have to sit with the hoi polloi? What? He's just sitting with he's sitting just in a regular seat. I mean, whatever. I mean, I respect it. But, he works for his boss is Chris Ilitch. Chris, you couldn't give him a suite? This is your head play-by-play for your Tigers. Just chilling. I don't know how good of his seat. It was probably one of the more expensive seats, but still. I'm just saying. I don't even know who he was sitting with. It was just like a guy, his buddy. Anyway, now speaking of Detroit teams that have really turned it on as of late, we got to talk about the Detroit Pistons. Right now, the Pistons, at the time when I wrote the note, they were just a game above 500. Nay. They are now more than a game above 500. They are now 2 games above 500. Which, again, might sound like it's, not that major. But look, in the Eastern Conference, if the season ended today, the Pistons would be the number 8 seed, and they'd be in the play-in. Right now, they're tied with the Miami Heat, 13 games back out of first, just half a game behind the Milwaukee Bucks. And my question is this. Is this team not only capable of making the play-in, but are they capable of making the playoff? And I wholeheartedly, and this is no smarm, this is no sarcasm, this is no me just being a homer. I truly believe they can do it. However, if they're going to do it, it will come at a bit of a cost. If they do it, it will be because they bought at the trade deadline. Now, the Pistons have one of the best cap situations in the league. I want to say they have like the most cap space in general. So they have ability to take on some higher paying contracts, right? Like, now, obviously the highest paying contracts, those guys are just not going to be available. But there are going to be guys available. I think of, and this is one I'm surprised really hasn't gotten mentioned a whole lot more. It's been mentioned in some circles, and I'm not an NBA talking head. I don't know the rumors. I don't know the details. All right, but Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. Now the Phoenix Suns, for what it's worth, they are currently in the play-in. Right now they're the 10th seed, so they're playing for a postseason spot. However, they are ridiculously playing below their standard, right? They are not where they want to be. Kevin Durant is naturally leading another team into complete dysfunction. After he led the Brooklyn Nets into dysfunction, he is now leading the Phoenix Suns into dysfunction, as apparently is tradition for Kevin Durant. And Bradley Beal, I don't know what his future is because, again, this guy is another one of just a born loser kind of guy, like a guy who can put up some good stats for bad teams, but as soon as the bright lights shine upon him, he does not show up. And then there's Devin Booker. Devin Booker, who is from Grand Rapids, I want to say. Devin Booker, who, for those of you who, care about things like statistics, is still one of the better players in the league. 24 points a game, 3 boards a game, 6 assists a game, shoots 43% from the field goal. So he is still a star to superstar in the league. And the other thing about him, he's not particularly old. He is, let's see, I want to say he's just, let me see if I can find his age. Does it not show me his age? Bio? He's from Grand Rapids. He's 28 years old. So he's just about entering his prime. So he would be something of a veteran presence, right? Obviously, he's already made the NBA Finals. He didn't win, but he made the Finals. And it just seems like at every point when he's off or what, like, he just seems like he's always around Detroit. I mean, we had an opportunity to draft him at the time, but for whatever reason, we didn't want the hometown player. Like, it's from Grand Rapids, so it's the other side of the state. But still, like, we didn't want it. And I don't know what it's going to take to get him. But again, we have the space. We have the capability to bring him on. Now, on the other end, there are other guys like Cam Johnson, guys like Lauri Markkanen. Some of the not as big superstar names, but still guys that are good players, guys that'll make your team better. Now, as far as what you would have to bundle up to get those players, I'm not in the business. of telling you what that looks like. I am in the business of telling you what this team looks like. Now, I did hear today, and I was a little shocked. I heard some people just saying, this team is actually not that good. They're taking advantage of a bad Eastern Conference. No. Okay, this is not just going up and down the schedule here as of late for the Pistons. They're not just beating bad teams, okay? They're beating teams that are pretty decently ahead of them in the standings. Teams like the Orlando Magic. Teams like the New York Knicks, which they just did. Teams even like the Los Angeles Lakers on the road. They beat the Miami Heat in overtime back in December 16th. If you go back to December the 16th, the Pistons have lost just three total games. Since December the 16th, the Detroit Pistons have lost 3 games. On top of the fact that Cade Cunningham is far and away a superstar in this league. And I have been as harsh as I have on Cade Cunningham because, there was a lot of, the turnovers, and he still has a bit of a turnover problem. You had he just wasn't developing a shot and all that. This year, 24.5 points a game, 6 boards a game, 9 assists a game. He's almost averaging a double-double, and he very well could be, all while shooting 46% from the field goal. He is not only having an all-star year, he is having an all-NBA year. It is just night and day the kind of player he has become for the Pistons. He is living up to that number 1 overall pick standard. He is living up to that, elite prospect that he was standard. And he has become a leader on this team in both offensive efficiency, but in just, he can get the ball to the right guy. He's an assist guy. It's not, Anthony Edwards driving to the basket and slamming over guys. It's not John Morant flying 6 feet in the air and dropping a ball, out of a UFO. But it's consistent. It's competent. It's smart. It's just good basketball. And the fact that I could say that about a Pistons team that last year won 14 games. We have won 7 more games, and we're not even into February. We're not even halfway through January, and we've won 7 more games than the Pistons did all of last year. And you know what's even funnier? I said going into this after this offseason, when the Pistons went out, they got Tobias Harris, they got Malik Beasley, they got Tim Hardaway Jr. And I thought, when you really think about it, this was actually kind of a good offseason. Malik Beasley is a solid player, and he turned into an absolute dog. He leads not just the team, he leads the league in 3 points made right now. He's just the guy's just a killer. He's like Big Shot Bob out there. I remember saying, this actually, I truly believe this was the year that the Pistons could go out there and win 30 games. And, saying that sounds like, oh my gosh, what terrible standards. 30 games was a big deal for the Pistons because they hadn't done it in a while. Not only do I believe they're going to win 30 games, I think they could certainly win 40. They could even win more than 40. They could win 45 games. I mean, even just looking ahead at the schedule here, it's not like it gets easy, but there are games where you're like, okay, this actually is going to be must watch because of just the way they've been playing. You got Indiana at home on Thursday. You got Phoenix at home on Saturday. You got at the Rockets on Monday. That's a 2:00 game. I don't know why. Oh, because of Martin Luther King Day. That's right. You have a lot of games coming up here where you're like, okay, they're gonna have a long road trip after those 2 home games, but hey, on Monday the 27th of January, they're gonna be on NBA TV, and then in early February, they're gonna be on ESPN. If the Pistons can get themselves to a point where they are either in the playoff or high in the play-in by the time that ESPN game comes around, I think the nation is going to get a real good view of Cade Cunningham because that's going to be, early February. People are probably going to start tuning into the NBA as the NFL and college football will definitely be over by that point. Cade Cunningham has a chance to put on a show, and it's funny because that is going to be the only non-NBA TV national broadcast that the Pistons get all year. So if the Pistons can continue what they're doing, and you're going to get closer and closer to the deadline, You can go out and make a move. Bring in a name. Bring in a Markkanen. Bring in a Cam Johnson. Heck, bring in a Devin Booker if you're feeling spicy. Maybe not all three of those guys. I don't know how you'll be able to do that. But bring in a name. Bring in a big name to make this team better. To where, okay, we could actually see the Pistons getting into the 6th seed. Maybe the 5 seed if they're feeling extra spicy. I mean, if you look at the teams ahead of them, the Pacers and the Bucks in the 5 and 6 seed. Neither of those teams are, playing elite basketball. The Pistons have a winning record on the road. Neither of those teams do. And the Pistons are also playing, a lot better in their last 10 compared to those two teams. Maybe not a lot better, but better. The Pacers have won 6 straight, and they've won 7 out of their last 10. The Pistons won 8. So, look, this Pistons team is not just fluky and not just kind of fun. This is a genuinely good basketball team. This is a basketball team worth watching. Okay? And if you've been a Pistons fan for any amount of time recently, it's been hard to say that about the Pistons. This is a genuinely fun Pistons team. It's young, it's gritty, it's tough. They'll play, late games, they'll play comeback games, they'll play you on the road, they'll play you well at home. Cade Cunningham will always put on a show. It's just good basketball. And my gosh, it feels so good to be able to say that about the Pistons. And you know what else? You know who I haven't had to hear from? Tom Gores. Tom Gores hadn't said nothing. Tom Gores has been media silent, and that is A-okay with me. Tom Gores, you can stay in Beverly Hills or Los Angeles. Actually, maybe don't stay in Los Angeles right now. I don't know if you're aware of what's going on, but probably don't. But you can stay wherever it is and stay media silent. That's fine. That's fine. As long as you are allowing Trajan Langdon and you are allowing JB Bickerstaff to just do whatever it is they do. Don't pressure them. If Trajan Langdon says, you know what, I don't really want to buy, I think I'm good with just sort of rolling it out and see what happens. Okay, that's fine. If he says, you know what, I think I want to do a little bit of selling. I'm not going to fire sale because the team is good enough to make the playoff, but maybe just a pinch of selling. Don't just let them. Don't do the Blake Griffin trade. All right, don't do the Derrick Rose signing. Don't do that. Don't do any of that. Let them cook. Trajan Langdon in just 1 year has proven to me that he is a pretty smart basketball mind, and JB Bickerstaff has proven to be one of the better coaches in this league because he has proven with the development of guys like Cade, fortunately Ivy getting hurt, but when he was playing at a very high level, even Jalen Duren in the last few games has really started to turn it on. So a lot of good things can be said about the Pistons. They are a genuinely good, basketball team. And I do think that they could make the playoff. I really do. They're going to have to make some moves, I think. I think they would have to do at least a little bit of buying. But I do think, for sure, this Pistons team is, certainly I think they're capable of making the play-in. If they can I think they could just make the playoff straight up. Just the way they're playing and the look ahead of their schedule, at least in the next few days, next coming weeks here, they got a chance to really get ahead here. Will they do it? Only time is going to tell. But at the very least, it's fun to watch. All right. All right, then. Well, that was fun. That was a very long show. I didn't know how long the show was going to be, but it ended up being a lot longer than I expected. Tarek Scribble checks in at number 2 on the MLB Network's top 10 for starting pitcher. How is he number 2? You're putting Zach Wheeler ahead of Tarek. Man, I will never understand people. But, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people, it is that time of the show. And we're not really going to be able to do the music for much longer because we're only going to have so many picks. But it is time, boys and girls, for the picks. All right. So, Last week, we actually ended up tying in our picks. Seth got the Buccaneers right, or he picked the Commanders, and I picked the Rams. So we ended up being 4-4, or 4-4 for either. We got 4 games here in the divisional round, so here we go. Texans visiting the Chiefs, the number 1 seed in the AFC. Seth is taking the Chiefs. Yeah, and I hate having to do it, but I do think the Chiefs are going to get this win. Look, Mahomes coming off a bye, and he's pretty used to it at this point. I just don't like this matchup for the Texans. This is a really good defense. As much as they're going to want revenge for that loss earlier this year, this just does not feel like the team that's going to just beat the Chiefs. If any team is going to beat the Chiefs, I don't think it's going to be the Texans. I would love for it to be the Texans. I'd love for Houston to have a little bit of success. All right? And I certainly would love for Kansas City to finally just go away. Please, I can't. If I got to see one more shot of Travis Kelce looking like a Neanderthal, I will lose my mind. All right? I don't want any of it. But yet I'm still taking the Chiefs here because I think they're just the better team. It's unfortunate, but it is what I believe is the case. So, give me the Chiefs. And then next on Saturday night, the Commanders heading to Ford Field, taking on the Lions. Seth is taking the Lions. Yeah, you already know what's going on here. All right, you see what I'm wearing. I'm wearing Red Wing stuff, so you can pretty much assume who I'm going to be picking. Yeah, the Lions, from a roster standpoint, are deeper. Dave Montgomery coming back from injury against the 3rd worst rushing defense in the league. That doesn't bode well. It really does not. And especially given the fact the Lions have been running the football just fine with just Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds back there. To get back David Montgomery on 2 weeks rest. Ooh. Or I guess, roughly 2 weeks. So, look, I think the offense is just too good for Detroit. The defense might be back. With Alex Anzalone playing at the level he was and how good that defense looked against Darnold, I don't know if it's going to be the same story as last time, but I think this defense is definitely capable of shutting down quarterbacks, especially rookie quarterbacks. They shut down Caleb Williams a couple of times here. So the offense is cooking, and the defense can do just enough. I think the Lions are going to be able to pull off the win here. Give me Detroit at home. And we got the Rams taking on the Eagles. Seth is taking the Eagles. I'm going to actually disagree. I'm going to take the Rams. You know why? Because the NFL wants Matthew Stafford against his former team in the NFC Championship game, because I can't just have peace, all right? I have to live with the fact that there is a possibility that Matthew Stafford will go on to his 2nd Super Bowl beating the Lions in the NFC Championship. I don't want to have to live in that world, but this is the world that I believe is going to happen. The Rams offensively are very good. The Eagles defensively are also very good. However, the Eagles on offense have been inconsistent. I don't trust Jalen Hurts as far as he could throw the football, which is not very far. He did not play a great game against Green Bay. They ended up winning that game because Jordan Love decided he didn't want to play football anymore and threw 3 interceptions. Now, that defense is perfectly capable of doing that. And I don't know how deep this Rams defense is going to be able to hold off the Eagles, on the other hand. But I just don't like this Eagles team. It's similar to the Vikings. I just don't feel like, Nick Sirianni stands up well against an elite, minded coach like Sean McVay. I don't know. Give me the Rams. It's gonna be Rams Lions in the NFC Championship game, and I'm going to emotionally be distraught for the next 2 weeks. It's gonna be fun. And finally, Ravens Bills on Sunday Night Football. Seth is taking the Bills. Man, this is actually the toughest one of them all. I am going to take the Bills. It's tough because these are 2 of the best teams in the NFL. And fortunately for our team, the Lions in the NFC, they don't have to worry about both of them. They got to worry about potentially one of them. I do think the Bills are going to win this game. I don't think that secondary for Baltimore is going to be able to handle Josh Allen. All year, that secondary has struggled. As fun as Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are in the postseason, I've seen it too much. And you could say you've seen it with Allen. I've only seen it with Allen against Mahomes. Okay, every other postseason game with Allen, he looks great. with Jackson, outside of last week he played a good game, and I think he had a good game against, I'm blanking on whoever. He's had some good closing games, but I just can't get the image out of my mind of that AFC Championship game last year where all he had to do was not be terrible and he just couldn't help himself. So give me the Bills. I hate to see it because I love Lamar Jackson, but I love the Bills just a little bit more. Give me Buffalo. All right, so rounding out the divisional round, here we go. Texans, Chiefs. We are both taking the Chiefs. Lions, Commanders, Lions. We are both taking the Lions. Rams, Eagles. Seth is taking the Eagles. I am taking the Rams. And Ravens, Bills. We are both taking the Bills. And those are your NFL divisional round picks. And that is the show. Jeez, over 2 hours, man. We really talked a lot. I mean, I guess when the playoffs happen, you got to break down all those games. At least a little bit. You got to talk about it. So, look, we talked about a lot. I'm going to get going because I got some editing to do, obviously. Clips will be coming out tomorrow. Show note. We will be live this Saturday night for the Lions taking on the Commanders in the playoffs. First playoff game of the calendar year. And a chance for the Lions to host the NFC Championship game for the first time in franchise history with a win. Hopefully they can get the job done, and we will be on to one win away once again for the second straight year from the Super Bowl. With that being said, I do thank everybody for stopping by, listening in, hanging out, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya. Goodbye. See you on Saturday. Goodbye.